Hello everybody and welcome to Let's Talk Residency Qualification. Oops, got something on my face. Residency Qualification increasing up to 5 years. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, coming to you from a wet Auckland here. It is really raining today. Anyway, you're probably not interested in that at all because you're here to talk about rugby. So please, if you have any comments, then please do put them below. Always up for a good rugby chat. So, World Rugby this week have increased the residency qualification period from 3 to 5 years. And that was a big headline we saw everywhere. And everyone was like, yeah, it's the right thing to do. We should stop all these people changing countries and playing for countries that they're not from. It's not right. And okay, fine. It was clearly, it was something that was had an air of inevitability about it. They definitely got a bandwagon behind it. Personally, I'm not sure it's going to change that much, and I'll explain why over the next few minutes or so. So that's what happened. And the other thing that happened that kind of was in the fine print, as a lot of, well, rather than the headlines, was that this won't take effect until the end of 2020. So players from now until then, as long as they've been in the country for 3 years, will be able to apply for, or been resident in that country for 3 years, will be able to play for that new country. Now that looks like it's 3 consecutive years, because they also brought in a rule that says if you have been resident in a country consecutively for 10 years, you can also you also represent that country as well. And that came into effect straight away. So there's a lot of comments about, hang on a second, if you can bring the 10-year rule in straight away, why you're not bringing the 5-year rule in straight away. And before the vote happened, we had countries like Scotland coming out saying, we're not voting for this. This isn't going to happen. We like it as things as they are now. And so what this is basically some sort of compromise. So players who move this season, or move in, who have signed for next season in the Northern Hemisphere, will have 3 years to get their residency and play for their countries before this rule kicks in. So any contracts that Scotland, or any project players that Scotland or Ireland have lined up and have already agreed, committed to pay these players, that means that still will go ahead, and they can still get, they can still qualify for those countries. And that's why they've done it. It's basically put it 3 years away, so that anyone who has signed contracts with this in mind can still go ahead. They're not sort of moving the goalposts for any players in their current situation. So that's the reason behind it, and that's what I think the compromise to get countries like Scotland and Ireland on board will have been. Admittedly, I don't know what Scotland's stance was. So Ireland's stance was. They would. I've not read, but they are the other country that tends to do project players along with Scotland. The other countries, it tends to be the clubs that bring a player in, and then they qualify over time rather than the unions having project players in there. So that's why there's a difference, and why I'm singling out those countries, even though there are plenty of Kiwis or South Africans or Pacific Islanders playing for other countries as well. So we're making a change. And the question is, what? If you want to make a change, generally it's because you have a problem. So what problem are we trying to solve here? And what we're talking about here is the integrity of rugby, and particularly integrity of the international game. And so it's not like the club game where you can go and buy a team. International sport isn't supposed to be about that. You shouldn't be able to go and buy a team. And so this is to protect that integrity, to have a team that represents a country, having players that represent that country or from that country, is the idea. Now, just so everyone knows my background, I was born in England, brought up in Africa and the Middle East. I lived in Singapore, Hong Kong. I'm married, and I live in New Zealand. I'm married to a Kiwi, and my kids were both born in Asia. So I know that where you're from isn't obvious anymore. One of my kids says that she's Chinese because she was born in Hong Kong, but she's got an English and a New Zealand passport. So where's she from? Who should she represent? So it's not a simple answer anymore, and that's why we need these residency rules in place, and why people should be allowed to move and represent a different country. It's not as simple as where mum and dad are from, where I've spent where I was brought up, because people aren't just brought up in one place anymore. We do move around. So is that really a problem that we're trying to solve? The real problem we're trying to solve is twofold, I think, and it's an image thing. It's about players moving to generally Europe, but also moving to Australia and New Zealand to a certain degree for money to play for these countries rather than feeling they're from there. And that's really what we're trying to stop. It's about the money thing at the end of the day, and try and make it look like international rugby, whilst it's a professional sport, it's not about the money. I'm sorry guys, but it is still about the money. And changing this from 3 to 5 years isn't going to change that migration of players from those locations, in my opinion. There are two ways you make change. One, you make it just too difficult to be where you are now, as in the situation you are now, so you behave differently, or you produce another outcome as to what you want and make it so much better that people decide to behave that way instead. We're trying the stick approach here. Don't move to another country because we'll make it longer. Bang, bang, bang. And that's not going to stop players moving, particularly Pacific Island players, because they're moving for the club money primarily. Once they've got the club money, yes, there may be a decision as to whether you want £20,000 a game playing for England, or £400 a game or $400 a game for playing for Fiji. That's if the union decides to pay you, rather than because they don't have a great record on actually paying up what they're supposed to. So players, particularly Pacific Island players, will still be moving for that club money. This is not going to slow down the players leaving the islands. What it's going to do is it's going to just remove or have less of them in the shop window, international rugby. There's still going to be plenty of those players in France, in England, in other places playing their rugby. They're still going to, and if we're trying to not stop that, but if we're trying to make sure they have the proper support when that happens, this isn't going to help that. We have read a very sad situation where one of the players in France last year committed suicide from being away from his family and not having the support network around him. If that's what we're trying to solve, this isn't going to solve that. We're still going to have that situation of all these Pacific Island players in places, and with some of them are going to be very unhappy in a different culture away from their support networks. These are young guys, remember. And as the female game goes professional, we may see we're going to perhaps see that as well on the female side. It's not just about it's about young people, full stop. So we're not stopping that. Brian Habana has come out and said he doesn't think it's going to make any difference to the number of players leaving South Africa either. And one of the things he says in there is, I think a lot of people outside South Africa don't understand that there are a number of unique things happening in South Africa at the moment. Not only from a rugby point of view, but from a political, economic and safety point of view. And he's right. One of the reasons I don't do lots of videos talking about the problems of South African rugby is I don't get them. I don't know. I've not been to South Africa. I've not been in there. Talking about racial quotas, etc. is a very dangerous area if you're not informed about it. And that's why I don't tend to talk about it much. When I have brought it up, it's generally taking articles from people who have been in South Africa and promoting those instead of my words, because I just don't know enough going on. But from Brian Habana's point of view, he still thinks we're going to see players leaving South Africa as well. So this is not going to stop the problems. It's not fixing the problems. What it might be doing is hiding some of those problems, but we're still going to see the movement of players we've been seeing for the past few years. So what is the solution? The solution is to use the carrot, not stick. The solution, as Ben Ryan said, for the Pacific Islands, is to give the boys, and in future the girls, the opportunity to earn a living in the Pacific Islands. Have a Super Rugby team in Fiji. Maybe put another one over time in Samoa and also Tonga as well. That way, the players don't have to go abroad to earn a living. They can earn a decent living at home, and that will slow down the number of players leaving. For South Africa, it's sort out the political mess that's down there. Now, that's very difficult because it's not just a rugby thing, it's a whole culture, country thing. But there are some things that rugby could definitely do to improve itself. The problems at the Kings, where you had two general meetings happening at the same time, both thinking they were running the region or the province, having them going bust. That is not solely down to the political situation in South Africa, and that's down to bad administration, bad sports administration. Again, if you want to see lots of Australian players not leaving Australia, again, they need to improve the administration, they need to improve the coaching in Australia, so that the teams are successful, so that teams make money, get fans through the doors, so that teams make money, so that teams can pay the players. Those are the things we need to be fixing if we want to stop this flow of players, and if people are really worried about seeing what they would call foreign players playing for other teams. This stick approach is not going to work. I don't think it's a bad thing, but also I don't think it's going to work the way that everyone thinks. And so yeah, fine, do it, but it's not going to make any difference. This isn't the fix. And unfortunately, that's the kind of thing we're seeing from rugby nowadays, is we're seeing some of these administrations where they're trying to put fixes in that aren't necessarily going to actually solve the real root problems. And I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but the whole head-high tackles and the extra cards, yes, it's good. We want to reduce the number of concussions. But their own survey found that the tackler gets concussed more often than the tackler, the person making the tackle rather than the ball carrier is the person who gets concussed more often than the ball carrier. Now, what we've done, we've protected the ball carrier even more because it's easy to do. It shows we're doing something. What we've not done is looked at how do we protect the tackler. So that is something, again, they put a fix in, but it's not going to solve the whole, it's not solving what they found to be the biggest problem with their own research. And I say that's something that we're seeing a trend of from World Rugby currently, and it's disturbing because we need strong administration, strong leadership to grow the game properly. So that's my opinion. If you agree or disagree, let me know, please. Please do share this with your friends if you enjoyed it. Give it the old thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. And don't forget you can sign up for my weekly newsletter so you don't miss any of these videos. Link above on Twitter, link down below in the notes on YouTube. Thank you very much for watching, and I will be back after the weekend with more videos next week.